Here we get into my favorite vessel that the Abrams movies have given us, the USS Kelvin, NCC-0514. This vessel might actually be my favorite in the new movies because this vessel and its class existed in the Prime timeline in addition to the Abrams verse. However, I like it for less superficial reasons as well. The vessel acts as a bridge between the Enterprise era designs and the TOS era designs. The Kelvin, in my opinion, acts as a faithful precursor to the TOS era vessels, even if the Kelvin is somewhat larger than a Constitution-class starship. I am not a proponent of the Abrams-verse upscaling tendency, but the size of the ship is disputable. The Kelvin makes a good midway point in ship lineage and evolutionary design between the Enterprise and TOS eras. The NX-class ships had a bronze-plated hull and had a submarine aesthetic. TOS-era ships had a light, smooth, glistening, featureless hull, and were much larger. The Kelvin design bridges these aesthetics. The Kelvin hull was a tan-plated design. The ship as a whole was larger than the NX, like the Constitution, but had an industrial design similar to the NX, but still slightly different. Also, the low-yield phaser beams that the Kelvin had were red, just like the phase cannons of the Enterprise era. The high-yield pulse phasers, the blue bolt phaser turrets, match the color of the standard beam phasers that would later be used on Constitution-class starships in the TOS area. I don't believe that those were rapid-fire photon torpedoes, because why would a simple survey ship be so heavily armed? Like I said, I'm a firm believer that the Kelvin design bridges these two eras. The only problem that comes to mind continuity-wise is the addition of the 0 in the registry number, as all registries below 1000 were 3 digits long instead of 4. But we've seen vessels like the USS Grissom and Star Trek III that are newer than the Enterprise but have a lower registry number. Therefore, this registry number issue isn't really a problem, and isn't something that really bothers me at all, since the registry system was already flawed to begin with. The Kelvin line of ships, when it was constructed, likely at the beginning of the 23rd century, may represent a golden age of new exploration for Starfleet. The Kelvin was considerably larger in size than the NX and even the later Constitution, and with this new era, Starfleet may have had a whole new wave of considerably larger ships launched to take larger, more scientific-oriented crews on exploratory missions. Although I do believe that a crew of 800 was a stretch, and was probably an exaggeration told by Pike to sway Kirk into joining Starfleet. It is possible that the design ethic here favored the internal volume of the ships created over the quantity of the ships that they actually put into space. Aside from rocky relations with the Klingons, the Federation didn't have any major conflicts occurring during the beginning of the 23rd century, and may mirror that peaceful era that led to the creation of the 24th century Galaxy class. I'd like to think that as relations with the Klingons may have soured, the Federation might have turned back from their all eggs in one basket design ethic, instead of building newer, smaller ships with smaller crews that filled the same roles of the larger, older ships. Ships with a balance in tactical prowess and long-range scientific capability, something I like to call an explorer. I would have most definitely considered the subsequent Constitution class a product of the explorer role, as it was more than capable in battle, and the Enterprise was on a 5-year mission of exploration, so it only makes sense. I liked the massive saucer design. Being larger than any saucer of the TOS or TMP eras, it's reasonable to assume the ship holds a strong scientific role, since ships of a scientific nature would have plenty of science personnel. People who are not on board for the sake of the ship, like engineers and command personnel, but people who are there for the sake of their scientific fields. Because of this, the ship would have plenty of labs and living quarters, which without a doubt would be housed in the saucer section, which is larger proportionally to the size of the ship than any other ship we've seen in Starfleet, at that time anyways. I have little to say about the engineering hull as per usual, although I am happy to see that the designers chose to keep the protruding deflector dish that the Constitution would later have. Overall, the interior of the engineering hull seems to be hollow, with main engineering appearing to be just a large cavity in the ship with no centralized design. The real-world explanation for this is they used a factory for the interior shots of Kelvin engineering. I myself don't throw a hissy fit over the whole starships need to have an even number of nacelles design ethic. The intel site that featured the Kelvin, while non-canon, said that the Kelvin had two massive lines of warp coils running side by side in the nacelle, implying that the Kelvin's nacelle is in fact two nacelles in one. Take what you will out of that. I like how the nacelle is extremely long compared to the rest of the ship, as it makes ships that were constructed after the Kelvin with shorter nacelles look more innovative in the fact that as technology progresses, things become smaller and less bulky. For the interior serves as a bridging of Starfleet design from the Enterprise and the TOS era again. The bridge was much larger than an NX-class starship, like the Constitution, but it was also darker, like the NX-class starships. Just like the bridge, the corridors were more spacious, but still had a darker industrial feel to them. On another note, the hallway structure seems to mirror the archways that would later be seen on the Enterprise in the original series. Overall, the ship is honestly one of my favorites. I've put it up there along with my favorite type, the Excelsior class. Although the original design that would have been used in place of the Kelvin, the USS Iowa, looked far more TOS-like in design, I like this worn industrial look better as a predecessor to the USS Enterprise on the original series. In the Federation fleet, being termed as a survey vessel, in combat, I would rate this vessel as serving in the Federation frigate or scout tier, since while larger, the ship is devoid of any heavy weapons, namely photon torpedoes. I don't care what the script says, they were shooting those blue bolts like they were candy. The ship has a higher emphasis put on the scientific role than the tactical role, and has that to explain for a lower combat rating.